I drove 4 hours to get to the family dinner. My father pointed at the plates and said, "Your brother's girlfriend is coming. Do not ruin this." I did not ruin anything. I set the table, I put on the apron, I served the food. Then his son's girlfriend sat down, looked at me across the room, and went still. She already knew who I was. My father did not. He never had. My coat was still on. I had not even put my bag down. And I was already being given a job. My name is Hannah. I work in pediatric rehabilitation. I help children recover from injuries and trauma. That is my work. I will tell you more about it later, but right now what matters is that my family has never really understood it. My father once described it at a dinner just like this one by saying Hannah does a kind of volunteer thing. He said it in front of everyone. I did not correct him. I never correct him. It was easier to swallow it than to start something that would end with him telling me I was being too sensitive. My brother Jason is older than me. He has always been the center of this family, the way a TV is the center of a living room. Not because he demanded it, because everyone arranged themselves around him. My father talks about Jason the way some people talk about investments. With pride. With numbers. With the quiet satisfaction of someone watching a chart go up. Jason got the degree my father wanted. Jason got the job my father respected. Jason followed the path my father drew and never stepped off it, and my father loved him for that, because it made his own choices feel correct. I went a different direction. I do not think my father ever forgave me for that. He did not say it out loud, he just stopped seeing me. Not all at once, gradually. I tried once to tell him about my work. I sat at this same table and started explaining what I do. He listened for maybe 30 seconds. Then he asked if Jason had called that week. That was the last time I tried. You learn to stop talking when the person across from you is already looking at the door. My mother is a quiet woman. She loves me. I believe that. But her love lives inside a system my father built, and she has never once stepped outside of it. She follows his lead on everything. If he treats Jason like the main event and me like the setup crew, she does not argue. She just hands me the apron. That is the word, apron. I have worn it at every family dinner for as long as I can remember. I am the one who sets the plates. I am the one who refills the water. I am the one who clears the table and loads the dishwasher and wipes down the counter while everyone else moves to the living room. Nobody has ever said, "Hannah, sit down and let someone else do it." And I stopped expecting them to. Because at some point it became easier to just do it than to feel the silence when I did not. I took off my coat. I put the candle on the counter where nobody would notice it. I put on the apron. I started setting the table. My father came back to check the plates and told me to use the good ones. The white set with the gold rim. I asked why. He said Jason's guest was important, and he wanted the table to look right. I had been coming to these dinners for years with the everyday plates. The good ones came out for Jason's girlfriend before she even walked through the door. That is how it works in this family. You set the standard based on who matters. And I had never been the person who raised the setting. I set the plates. I counted the chairs. I put out napkins and glasses and silverware. I put a place card at Jason's spot. My mother had written one. It said Jason plus guest. I looked at the rest of the table. There was no card for me. There never was. I do not know why that hit me that night. It had been the same way for years. But sometimes you see something you have seen 100 times, and on the 101st time it lands differently. I stood there holding a fork and looking at the empty space where my name was not, and I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, more like tiredness, the kind that does not come from lack of sleep. My father came into the kitchen while I was finishing up. He stood in the doorway with his arms crossed. He said, "This girl Jason is bringing seems serious." He said it could be a big deal for him. Then he looked at me and said, "Just be normal tonight. Do not make it about you. Do not ruin this." I was holding a serving spoon. I looked at him. I wanted to ask when I had ever ruined anything. I wanted to ask when I had ever made anything about me. I wanted to ask if he even knew what I did for a living, or where I lived, or whether I was happy. But I did not ask any of that. I just said okay. Because that is what I do. I say okay, and I set the plates and I wear the apron. And I disappear into the function of being useful, so that nobody has to deal with the inconvenience of me being a person. The guests started arriving. Extended family. a couple of my father's friends. My mother's sister, who always comments on how thin I look and means it as a concern but says it like a compliment. The house filled the way it always fills, with noise and warmth that is meant for other people while I move around the edges making sure everything runs. Jason arrived about 20 minutes before dinner. He walked in the way he always does. Confident, comfortable, like the house recalibrates itself when he enters. My father stood up, they shook hands. My father said something about Jason's new project at work, and Jason smiled, and they had a conversation that lasted longer than any conversation my father has had with me in the last 5 years. I watched from the kitchen, apron on, serving spoon in hand. Invisible. Then Jason turned toward the door and said she is parking the car. He looked excited. A little nervous. It was strange to see my brother nervous. He is not the type. But this girl clearly meant something to him. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was about my age. Dark hair. Warm face. She smiled at Jason. He put his hand on her back and started introducing her to the room. My father shook her hand. My mother hugged her. Everyone smiled. Everyone welcomed her. She was already being treated better in her first 30 seconds than I had been in the last 30 years. Her name was Claire. Jason walked her around the room. She smiled at each person. Polite. Genuine. She seemed like a good person. The kind of person who pays attention. And then Jason brought her toward the kitchen. Toward me. She looked at me. I looked at her. And something happened that I did not expect. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Her smile did not drop. But something behind her eyes shifted. Like a window opening. She recognized me. I could see it. She knew who I was, and not from a photograph Jason had shown her. From somewhere else. Somewhere real. She opened her mouth slightly like she was going to say something. Then she stopped. She looked at Jason, she looked back at me. She said, "It is nice to meet you." But her voice was different from the voice she had used with everyone else. Softer. Like she was holding something back. I said, "Nice to meet you too." I did not understand what had just happened. I did not know how she knew me. I did not know why her eyes looked like that. Like she was looking at someone she had been thinking about for a long time. She squeezed my hand when we shook. Just for a second. Firm. Intentional. Then she turned and followed Jason to the table. I stood in the kitchen with the serving spoon and the apron and the plates I had set for a family that did not see me. And I thought about the way she had looked at me. Like I was not invisible. Like I was the opposite of invisible. I did not know yet why she knew me. But I could feel it in my chest. Something was about to change at this table tonight. And for the first time in years, it was not going to be the plates. Dinner started the way it always starts. I carried the dishes out, I filled the water glasses. I made sure the bread basket was full, and the butter was soft, and the serving spoons were in the right bowls. Nobody thanked me. Not because they were ungrateful, because they did not notice. That is worse than ingratitude. Ingratitude means someone saw what you did and chose not to acknowledge it. My family never saw it in the first place. I was furniture. I was part of the system that made the evening work. You do not thank a table for being a table. Claire was sitting across from Jason. I watched her during the first few minutes. She was polite. She laughed at the right moments. She answered questions about her work and her family and how she and Jason had met. But something was off. I could feel it. Every few minutes her eyes would drift toward me. Not obviously, just a glance. Quick. Then back to whoever was talking, like she was checking on me, like she was watching something unfold that nobody else could see. I told myself I was imagining it. I sat down at the far end of the table near the kitchen because that is where I always sit. Close to the door so I can get up quickly when something needs refilling. I had not taken off the apron. I never do during dinner. It stays on until the last dish is washed. Someone asked me what I do for work. I do not remember who. It was casual. The kind of question people ask when there is a pause in conversation and they need to fill it. I opened my mouth to answer. My father got there first. He said Hannah does a kind of volunteer work. He said it with a small smile, the smile people use when they are being generous about something they do not respect. He said it is nice what she does, but it is more of a passion project than a real career. He looked at me when he said it. Not with cruelty, with the confidence of a man who believes he is being accurate. I did not correct him. I stopped correcting him years ago. My work did not exist in his world. And fighting to make it exist took more energy than I had left after setting all the plates. I looked down at my food. I moved something around with my fork. I could feel Claire watching me. Her jaw was tight. I noticed it because it was the only face at that table that was reacting to what had just happened. Everyone else had moved on. My father's description of my career had lasted about 8 seconds, and the conversation had already shifted to something else. 8 seconds. That is how long it takes to erase someone at a dinner table. A few minutes later, someone mentioned Jason's promotion. My father sat up straighter. He talked about Jason's company, the growth, the trajectory. He used words like impressive and self-made, and I watched him light up the way he lights up whenever Jason's name is attached to a success. Then someone said, "You must be proud of both your kids." A normal thing to say. A polite thing. A thing that assumes a father sees both of his children. My father paused. He said, "Jason has really carved out his own path." Then he looked at me and said, "Hannah is doing her own thing too, in her own way." In her own way. 4 words. Gentle enough to sound supportive. Specific enough to mean less than. Claire put her fork down. I heard it. The small sound of metal on porcelain. She was looking at my father. Not with anger. With something I could not name at first. Later I realized it was disbelief. The kind that comes when you are watching someone be small in front of others, and nobody in the room seems to notice. She said, "Excuse me." The table went quiet. She said, "I have a question." She looked at my father. She said, "Do you know what Hannah actually does? Not the version you just described. What she actually does." My father blinked. He started to say something. She did not wait. She said, "I know what she does." Her voice was steady, but I could see her hands were not. She was gripping the edge of the table. She said, "I know because she..." And then she stopped. She closed her eyes for a second. Started again. She said, "My sister almost lost the ability to walk." She looked at Jason and said, "That is actually how we met. Lily was in rehab at the same clinic connected to the hospital where Jason works. I was there every week picking up my sister. That is how I found Jason. And that is how I already knew Hannah before tonight." The room went very quiet. She said Lily was in an accident. She was just a kid. 7 years old. She could not walk. The doctors were not sure she would again. Claire pressed her lips together. She was trying to hold it together, and I could see it was costing her everything. She said Hannah came every day. For months. She said my sister screamed and threw things, and refused to do the exercises, and Hannah sat on the floor with her every single time. She paused. She said, "I am sorry." She wiped her eye with the back of her hand. Then she said the day Lily took her first steps after the accident, she did not walk toward me. She did not walk toward my mother. She went straight to Hannah. Claire's voice broke on that last part. She did not try to fix it. She looked at my father. She was not calm anymore. She said, "I have sat here all evening and listened to you." She stopped, took a breath, started again. "I have listened to you talk about your son like he is the only child you raised, and then talk about your daughter like I do not even know what to call it. Like she does not count." She said, "This woman spent months on a floor with my 7-year-old sister, teaching her how to walk again. And you just called it volunteering. You do not know what she does. You never asked. Nobody moved." My hands were in my lap, and I was gripping my own fingers so hard they were white. I was looking at my plate, because if I looked up, I was going to cry, and I did not want to cry at this table. Not tonight. Not in front of people who had never once asked me anything worth crying about. My father did not speak. He just looked at his plate. I think it was the first time in his life he did not have a version of the story ready. My mother was sitting very still. Her hands were flat on the table. She was not looking at my father or at Claire or at me. She was looking at the plate in front of her. The good plate. The white one with the gold rim. The plate that had been brought out for Claire. And I think in that moment she was thinking about all the dinners I had served on everyday plates and all the evenings I had cleared the table while she went to the living room. I do not know that for sure. But something in her posture changed, like the air had gone out of her. Jason was staring at Claire, not with the confidence he walked in with. His mouth was slightly open. He looked around the table slowly. At me. At my father. At my apron. At the plates I had set. At the kitchen I had been walking in and out of all night. I think it was the first time he saw the room the way it actually was, instead of the way it had always been arranged for him. Claire was still sitting upright. Her eyes were wet, but she had not wiped them. She picked her fork back up. She did not apologize. She did not say sorry for the outburst. She just picked up her fork and took a bite like she had said what needed to be said, and the rest was not her problem. The dinner continued. Somehow, people started talking again, slowly, about other things. The food. The weather. A cousin's new house. The conversation moved the way water moves around a rock. It went around what had just happened because nobody knew how to go through it. I sat at my end of the table, apron on, hands in my lap. Something inside me had cracked open, and I did not know yet whether what was coming out was grief or relief. They feel the same sometimes. Like pressure releasing from somewhere you forgot was full. When the plates were empty, I did what I always do. I started to stand. I reached for the closest dish. My hand was on the plate when I stopped. I looked at the apron. I looked at the table. I looked at the kitchen I had walked into 100 times. I untied the apron. I folded it. I set it on the table next to my plate. And I sat back down. Nobody said anything. But everybody saw it. Nobody cleared the table. That had never happened before. The plates sat there with leftover food going cold and glasses half empty, and the apron folded next to my seat like a flag someone had put down. I do not know what people did after I sat back down. I think some of them went to the living room. I think my mother started putting things away at some point. I heard cabinet doors opening and closing. It sounded unfamiliar. Like the house did not know what to do when someone else was doing the work. I went outside. I needed air. I sat on the front steps and I put my hands on my knees and I breathed the way you breathe when you are trying to keep something inside your chest from spilling out. The night was cool. I could hear the dishes through the window. I could hear voices. Muffled. Careful. The kind of voices people use when they know something happened but do not want to be the first one to name it. Claire came out a few minutes later. She did not ask if I wanted company. She just sat down beside me on the step. We did not talk for a while. She looked at the street. I looked at my hands. Then she said, "I am sorry I did that in front of everyone." I said, "Do not apologize." She said I was not planning to say anything. I just could not sit there and listen to him talk about you like that. Not when I know what you did for Lily. I did not know what to say. I am not good at receiving things. Compliments. Gratitude. Attention. I have spent my whole life giving those things to other people and standing behind the kitchen door while they received them. Having someone fight for me at a dinner table was so unfamiliar that I did not know where to put it in my body. It sat in my chest like something warm that did not have a shelf yet. She told me Lily was doing well. She said Lily talks about me. She said every time they go to a doctor's appointment, Lily asks if Hannah is going to be there. She said my name is part of Lily's vocabulary the way a favorite teacher or a safe place is. She said Lily does not know what I sacrificed or how many hours I spent on the floor with her, or how many times I drove home after a session and sat in my car for 10 minutes because I was too tired to walk inside. But she knows my name. And she says it with trust. And that, Claire said, is more than most people get in a lifetime. I looked at the sky. I think I was trying not to cry again. I was tired of almost crying. I had been almost crying since I walked through the door that evening with a candle nobody looked at. The front door opened behind us. Jason stepped out. He stood there for a second like he was not sure whether he was welcome. Then he sat down, not next to me, a few feet away. on the other side of the step, close enough to be present, far enough to not crowd. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said I did not know about any of it. I said you not knowing is not the problem. You never asking is the problem. You have never once asked me what I do, not how my day was, not whether I am okay. You are my brother and you do not know anything about my life because you never asked a single question. He did not argue, he did not make an excuse. He just sat there and let the truth land and stayed next to it. That was the most honest moment I have ever had with my brother. Claire was watching him. Quiet. I think Jason felt it even if he did not understand it. We sat on those steps for maybe 20 minutes. Nobody tried to wrap it up, nobody said a speech. We just sat there with the night air and the sound of someone else doing dishes and the weight of a family dinner that had finally told the truth. I left around 10. I said goodbye to a few people inside. My mother hugged me. It was not the usual hug, it was tighter. She held on for a beat longer than she ever has. She did not say anything about what happened at the table, but she hugged me like she meant it. And that was different enough to matter. My father was standing by the front door when I walked toward it, arms at his sides. He was not blocking the door, he was just standing near it, like he had something he wanted to say, but his mouth and his brain were not cooperating. I stopped, I looked at him, his jaw moved, nothing came out. Then he said, "Drive safe." 2 words. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement, just drive safe. But his voice was different, softer than I had ever heard it. Like the words were carrying more than they were designed to hold. I walked to my car. I did not look back. Not because I was angry, because I had been looking back at that house for 30 years, hoping someone would come to the door and really see me, and tonight someone finally had. It just was not anyone I expected. Weeks went by. Claire and I started talking. Not about the dinner, about Lily, about her progress. She sent me a photo one afternoon. Lily on a swing, smiling. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then my father sent me a message. I almost did not open it. I stared at his name on my screen for a full minute before I tapped it. It was short. It said, "Claire told me about Lily." That was it. No apology. No, I was wrong. No, I should have known. Just the girl's name. Lily. The man who called my work, volunteer work, had written the name of the child whose life I helped rebuild. He did not say he was proud. He did not say he understood. But he wrote her name. And for a man who had never once asked what I do, writing the name of someone I helped was the furthest he had ever walked in my direction. I did not reply right away. I thought about all the dinners, all the plates, all the aprons. And then I thought about the fact that he had typed 4 words about a little girl he had never met and sent them to the daughter he had never seen. It was not enough. But it was the first thing he had ever given me that was not a job. A few weeks later, Claire invited me to her parents' house. She said Lily had been asking about me. She said Lily had something she wanted to show me. I said okay. I drove over on a Saturday morning, I parked on the street, I walked up the driveway, the front door was open. I could see into the hallway. Then I saw her. Lily appeared in the doorway. She was standing. On her own. No wall, no rail, no hand holding her up. Just a 7-year-old girl, standing on 2 legs, that doctors were not sure would carry her again. She saw me. Her face opened up the way children's faces do when they see someone they trust. And then she did something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. She walked toward me. Not fast. Careful, 1 step at a time. The way she had practiced hundreds of times on the floor with me beside her. Each step was deliberate and a little unsteady and absolutely hers. She walked down the hallway, she walked through the door, she walked across the porch. And when she reached me, she put her arms around my legs and held on. I dropped to my knees, I held her. I could feel her heart beating against my chest and her small hands gripping my shirt. She smelled like soap and outside, and something sweet I could not place. I held on to her and everything I had carried for 30 years. Every plate, every apron, every time I was not seen, went quiet. Not gone, just quiet. Because this child saw me. This child walked toward me, on legs she rebuilt with my help. And she said my name like it was the safest word she knew. Claire was standing inside the door. She was crying. I was crying too. I was on my knees on a porch holding a little girl who not long ago could barely stand on her own, and now she had just walked to me like I was home. My father called my work volunteering. He said I was doing my own thing in my own way. He said, "Do not ruin this. This is what I do." I get on the floor with kids who are scared, and I stay there until they are not scared anymore. I show up when no one else does. I hold on when people let go. And sometimes, if I am lucky, one of them walks toward me on their own 2 feet. And that is worth more than anything I have ever been handed at a dinner table. Some people spend their whole lives setting the table for a family that never sees them. If that is you, I want you to hear this. The people who see you might not share your last name. They might not sit at your table. They might be small enough to hold in your arms. But they see you. And sometimes they walk toward you, one careful step at a time. And that is worth more than any plate you have ever set. Has anyone ever seen you when your own family could not? Tell me who. Say their name. They deserve it. And tell me where you are watching from right now. I want to know who is here. If this stayed with you, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.